At the edge of a bustling city, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and ambition pulsed through every street, stood a mansion that seemed to hold its breath. It was a fortress of wealth, its iron gates towering like sentinels, guarding the secrets of Mr. Alden, a man whose name carried the weight of empires. His signature could shift fortunes, topple companies, or raise towers to the heavens. Half the city's skyline bore his mark, and his home glittered with marble floors, golden chandeliers, and crystal that caught the light like frozen stars. Yet, for all his riches, a shadow clung to him, a wound no amount of money could mend. His daughter, Lily, was believed to be blind. From her earliest days, doctors had delivered their verdict with cold certainty. Her eyes never followed the flicker of a candle, never reached for the vibrant hues of her toys, never met her father's gaze when he tried to coax a smile. It was a truth Mr. Alden had built his life around, a truth that carved a hollow space in his heart. He poured his fortune into her world, braille books with leather bindings, caregivers trained in every art of compassion, toys crafted to spark joy through touch and sound. But guilt was his constant companion. He blamed himself for his absence during Lily's fragile first months, when her mother had shouldered the weight of parenthood alone. By the time he returned, ready to pour his love into her, the doctor's words had sealed her fate. His only child, his brightest hope, would never see his face. The mansion grew colder with each passing year, its halls echoing with the soft steps of servants who moved like ghosts. Lily, dressed in gowns that rivaled princesses, wandered those halls, her small hands clutching stuffed animals, her world silent and still. Mr. Alden drowned his sorrow in board meetings, his voice steady as he signed contracts, but his heart was elsewhere, locked behind a wall of regret. Everyone accepted the story. The doctor's words were gospel, unquestioned by all, except one. Before we unravel this tale of heartbreak and hope, let me ask you something. Do you believe in the kind of kindness that can change a life? If this story stirs something in you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a spark of hope, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Your support helps us share stories that remind the world of the power of compassion. Now, let's meet the one person who dared to see differently. Clara was a maid, barely in her 20s, with little more than determination to her name. She scrubbed floors that reflected her tired eyes, dusted furniture she could never dream of owning, and worked long hours to send money to her younger siblings back home. But Clara carried a light inside her, a warmth that poverty couldn't extinguish. To her, Lily wasn't a patient to be pitied or a problem to be managed. She was a child who deserved laughter, friendship, and a chance to shine. From her first day in the mansion, Clara noticed what others missed. When she entered a room with a tray, Lily's head turned slightly before Clara made a sound. When she arranged fresh roses in a vase, Lily's gaze lingered on the crimson petals for a heartbeat too long to be chance. And once, when Clara dropped a shimmering hairpin onto the plush carpet, Lily's eyes flickered downward, as if chasing its glint. At first, Clara didn't dare voice her thoughts. Who was she, a maid scraping by, with no letters after her name, to challenge the diagnoses of doctors or the beliefs of a man like Mr. Alden? But her heart whispered what her lips feared to say. Lily could see. Not clearly, perhaps, but enough to question the story everyone else had accepted. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to test her suspicion in quiet ways. She placed toys at different angles, watching as Lily's hand reached unerringly for the one catching the sunlight. She held a flashlight while pretending to clean, noting the faint narrowing of Lily's pupils. Each sign deepened her conviction, but it also filled her with dread. If she was wrong, she could lose everything, her job, her siblings' lifeline, her place in the world. If she was right, a terrible truth had been buried beneath years of silence. The moment of truth came on a golden afternoon, when sunlight poured through the mansion's tall windows, bathing the playroom in a warm glow. Lily sat in a red dress, a stuffed bear cradled in her arms. Clara, her heart pounding, gently shone a small torch toward Lily's eyes, not to startle her, but to test, one last time, if there was a spark. And there it was, a flicker of life, a reflection of light, proof that sight had not been lost. Clara's breath caught, her hands trembling as she whispered to herself, "This child isn't blind. She's been trapped in a story that isn't hers." At that moment, footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Mr. Alden stood in the doorway, his sharp suit a stark contrast to the weariness in his eyes. He froze, his gaze locking onto Clara and the torch in her hand. Lily's face turned toward the light, her eyes wide and alive. Suspicion stormed across his features, but what he saw next shattered something deep inside him. Lily's eyes glistened, following the beam with a clarity that defied everything he'd been told. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken questions. Clara braced herself, certain she'd crossed a line that would cost her everything. But it was Lily who broke the silence. Her small voice trembled as she reached out toward the light and said, "It's so bright." Mr. Alden staggered, his heart hammering. For years, he'd carried the weight of his daughter's blindness like chains around his soul. He'd accepted it, grieved it, let it define his distance from her. To hear those words, to see her respond, was it possible? His knees buckled, and for the first time, the man who commanded empires felt utterly powerless. Clara stood tall, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her. She explained everything, the subtle movements she'd noticed, the signs everyone else had overlooked, the quiet tests she'd conducted in the corners of her duties. She admitted her terror of speaking up, but also her certainty that Lily was not blind, only misunderstood. Mr. Alden listened, his mind reeling. He remembered the doctors, the endless appointments, the grim faces that had shaped his reality. How could a maid, with no training, see what they hadn't? Yet the truth stood before him, undeniable, in his daughter's shining eyes. What followed was a whirlwind of action. New specialists were called, not the ones who had dismissed Lily, but fresh voices willing to look again. Tests were run, lights shone, patterns drawn. Slowly, the truth unfolded. Lily had a rare condition that dimmed her vision but didn't erase it. With therapy, patience, and the right care, her sight could grow stronger. In the privacy of his chambers, Mr. Alden wept, his stoic mask crumbling. He'd believed his daughter lived in darkness, and in his grief, he distanced himself, afraid to cause her more pain. But she'd been waiting, silently, for him to notice her, to believe in her. It wasn't his wealth that gave her a chance, it was Clara's compassion, her refusal to ignore the truth. As weeks turned to months, Lily's world bloomed. She began to see colors, the blue of her teddy bear, the green of the garden leaves, the gold of sunlight dancing on the floor. Mr. Alden threw himself into her life, reading picture books by her side, guiding her hands as she painted messy rainbows, laughing when she pointed out the sparkle of his cufflinks. The mansion, once a silent monument, filled with music, laughter, and the joy of a child discovering a world she'd been told she'd never see. Clara, though, remained the heart of the story. Mr. Alden offered her riches, promotions, anything she desired. But Clara, humble as ever, asked only that Lily be given love and time, things no fortune could buy. She stayed on, not for the salary, but for the bond she'd forged with the little girl whose world was opening day by day. Word of Lily's story spread, first as whispers among neighbors, then as a tale told in markets and coffee shops. A billionaire's daughter, thought blind, saved by the heart of a maid. It became a beacon of hope, a reminder that truth often hides in quiet places, and that kindness can shift destinies more than wealth ever could. For Mr. Alden, the change was profound. He no longer measured his worth by contracts or skyscrapers, but by the light in Lily's eyes when she ran to him after therapy. He traded boardrooms for playroom rugs, building block castles with Lily and Clara. To Lily, Clara was more than a maid, she was a sister, a guardian angel who saw what others couldn't. To Mr. Alden, she was a reminder that the greatest treasures lie not in vaults, but in the courage to care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that a single act of kindness can rewrite a life, please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Your support keeps these stories alive, spreading hope to those who need it most. Before we go, I have one request: leave a comment below. Share what this story meant to you, or a time when someone's kindness changed your life. Your words might inspire someone else today. The mansion at the city's edge was no longer just a symbol of wealth. It became a home, alive with light and love, where a child learned to see, a father learned to feel, and a maid proved that kindness is the greatest gift of all.